Howard Cosell was no stranger to controversy. He had defended Muhammad Ali when the world turned its back on him, challenged network executives, and faced death threats for his outspoken views. For decades, he thrived under the pressure, building a reputation as the most fearless voice in American sports broadcasting. But one night in 1983, during a football game millions were watching, a single offhand remark would unleash a storm that even he could not survive. It was the moment that turned his name from legendary to infamous, and it cost him everything he had built. The rise of a reluctant lawyer turned broadcaster. Howard William Cohen was born on March 25, 1918, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the son of Jewish immigrants Isidore and Nellie Cohen. His parents, like so many who fled persecution in Eastern Europe, believed education was the surest path to survival and success in America. They stressed hard work and achievement, and young Howard absorbed those lessons quickly. By the time he was 21, he had accomplished something remarkable: a bachelor's degree in English literature and a law degree from New York University. He was intelligent, ambitious, and already restless for more. He entered the legal profession in Manhattan and quickly built a respectable practice. Among his clients were well-known athletes, including baseball legend Willie Mays. From the outside, his career looked stable and prosperous. He was earning a strong income for the time, somewhere between $25,000 and $30,000 a year. But inside, Howard was dissatisfied. He found the daily grind of legal work tedious and uninspiring. Colleagues often caught him pacing in his office, pretending to deliver fiery speeches to imaginary juries or narrating the play-by-play of sports contests that existed only in his mind. Friends thought this behavior odd, but for Howard, it was a sign that law was not his calling. He once admitted that he lacked sufficient mediocrity to survive happily in the legal world. He needed something louder, more public, something that gave him influence. That opportunity came in 1953, when ABC Radio invited him to host a children's baseball program in New York. The concept was simple. Little league players would interview major league stars. Howard agreed, even though the job came without pay. For 3 years, he juggled his daytime law practice with late-night broadcasting sessions, driven not by money but by the belief that this was his way into a new world. The show might have been lighthearted, but Howard noticed something deeper. When Yankees outfielder Hank Bauer casually criticized his manager on air, the remark made headlines. Cosell realized then that real, unscripted conversation had the power to shape stories far beyond the ballpark. By 1956, he abandoned law entirely and devoted himself to full-time sports reporting. Unlike most broadcasters who played it safe and avoided confrontation, Cosell charged directly into controversy. He asked blunt, uncomfortable questions. He pressed athletes and coaches until they revealed more than they intended. Some viewers admired his honesty, others despised his arrogance, but no one ignored him. His style was abrasive, but it was also groundbreaking, and it set him apart from every other voice on the air. His defining partnership came in the 1960s with a young boxer then known as Cassius Clay. When Clay announced his new name, Muhammad Ali, most of the press rejected it. Newspapers continued calling him Clay, and television anchors avoided the subject. But on national television, Howard Cosell did what few others dared. He called him Muhammad Ali. The backlash was fierce, but Cosell stood firm, insisting that every man had the right to be called by his chosen name. That act of respect cemented their relationship. Ali later said that Cosell gave him a voice when the world wanted to silence him. Their dynamic on screen was electric, part genuine friendship, part theatrical performance, and together they pushed conversations about race, religion, and politics into the living rooms of millions of Americans. For Cosell, it was proof that his leap from law to broadcasting had been more than just career change. It was destiny. reinventing television with Monday Night Football. By 1970, Howard Cosell had become one of the most recognizable voices in sports. That same year, ABC executive Roone Arledge made a bold decision that would change both television and Cosell's career forever. He brought Cosell into the broadcast booth for a brand new experiment: Monday Night Football. At the time, professional football was growing rapidly in popularity, but no one imagined that a weekly primetime game could become one of the most watched programs in the country. Arledge wanted drama, unpredictability, and a sense of theater. Howard Cosell was the perfect fit. Unlike other broadcasters who simply described the plays, Cosell injected opinion, confrontation, and personality into the game. Alongside Frank Gifford and Don Meredith, he turned each broadcast into a spectacle. Gifford was calm and likable, Meredith brought humor, and Cosell delivered sharp analysis and often harsh criticism. Their chemistry was electric. Fans didn't just watch for football, they tuned in to hear the sparks fly between the men in the booth. Bars and living rooms across America became divided. Were you on Team Cosell, or did you hate him? Either way, people couldn't stop talking about him the next morning. Cosell's booming lines became part of American culture. During the famous 1973 fight between Joe Frazier and George Foreman, his call of "Down goes Frazier, down goes Frazier," echoed through televisions across the world and became immortal. On the football field, his catchphrase, "He could go all the way," made routine touchdowns sound like epic triumphs. He wasn't simply a commentator, he was a performer shaping the way fans experienced sports. But his style also attracted critics. Newspaper columnists called him arrogant, fellow broadcasters mocked his hairpiece, and his name changed from Cohen to Cosell, and some fans labeled him the most hated man in sports. Yet Cosell thrived on the attention. He once said, "I tell it like it is." For him, criticism was proof that he was doing his job right. Still, the stress of live television, the heavy drinking behind the scenes, and the constant battles with executives began to take their toll. Even as ratings soared, Cosell's insecurities deepened. He wanted to be more than a sportscaster. He wanted to be recognized as a voice of truth during historic moments. That ambition would lead to both his finest hour and his ultimate downfall. Munich, 1972, the moment he never forgave. In September 1972, Howard Cosell traveled with ABC Sports to cover the Summer Olympics in Munich, West Germany. What was meant to be a celebration of athletic excellence became one of the darkest chapters in Olympic history. In the early hours of September 5th, Palestinian terrorists stormed the Olympic Village, killing 2 members of the Israeli team and taking 9 others hostage. It was the first time that global terrorism was unfolding live on television, and ABC suddenly found itself covering a crisis no one had ever prepared for. Roone Arledge, the president of ABC Sports, made a quick and fateful decision. Instead of placing Cosell on the air, he turned to Wide World of Sports host Jim McKay to anchor the broadcast. McKay, calm and composed, guided viewers through the chaos for hours, eventually breaking the news of the hostages' deaths with his now famous words, "They're all gone." His coverage won awards and became one of the most respected moments in television history. Cosell, meanwhile, was sidelined. He had been dispatched to the Olympic Village, where he managed to talk his way past guards by claiming he was a Puma shoe salesman. Once inside, he sent back reports over a walkie-talkie, describing athletes walking casually near the hostage site as if nothing had happened. Later, he even witnessed the hostages being moved through a tunnel toward buses that would take them to the airfield. But his contributions were reduced to brief mentions, his voice barely audible to the audience. Cosell was furious. He stormed into Arledge's office, demanding to be put on air, shouting, "Put me on, Roone! I'm the only one who can tell it." But Arledge refused. He believed Cosell's sharp style was wrong for such a tragic event, fearing it could turn disaster into spectacle. McKay stayed on camera while Cosell fumed in the shadows. For the rest of his life, Cosell never forgave what he saw as a betrayal. He mocked McKay to colleagues, insisting that he would have been better suited to handle the crisis. Even years later, when he was handed the responsibility of announcing John Lennon's death on live television, Cosell still carried resentment over Munich. That night in 1972 remained the moment he believed was stolen from him, the chance to prove he was more than just a sportscaster. The comment that ended it all. On the night of September 5, 1983, exactly 11 years after Munich, Howard Cosell found himself at the center of a storm, unlike any he had faced before. It was Monday Night Football, with the Dallas Cowboys facing the Washington Redskins. Millions were tuned in, as always, when Washington's wide receiver Alvin Garrett slipped past defenders and picked up a crucial first down. Excited by the play, Cosell blurted out words that would define the rest of his career. "That little monkey gets loose, doesn't he?" The reaction was immediate. Comparing an African-American player to a monkey struck many viewers as racist and deeply offensive. Phones at ABC lit up with complaints. Newspapers blasted the remark. Reverend Joseph Lowry, president of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, demanded an apology and called on ABC to take action. In the eyes of the public, Cosell had crossed a line. At first, Cosell denied even saying the words. When the tapes proved him wrong, he defended himself. He explained that he had often used the term "little monkey" affectionately to describe quick or playful behavior. He pointed to a 1972 broadcast where he used the same phrase for Mike Adamle, a white player, and to his own family, where he sometimes called his grandchildren little monkeys. Even Alvin Garrett himself came forward, saying he did not feel demeaned by the comment and that he liked Cosell personally. Muhammad Ali, too, publicly supported Cosell, reminding the world of his long history of standing up for black athletes. But the damage was done. The context didn't matter, nor did his decades of advocacy for civil rights. The media framed the remark as a racial slur, and that interpretation stuck. Cosell, once the most powerful voice in sports broadcasting, suddenly found himself isolated. He described Monday Night Football as a stagnant bore and resigned from the broadcast booth before the end of the season. After more than a decade of shaping how America experienced football, his time was over. Cosell tried to move on. In 1984, he launched Sports Beat, a 30-minute program that he later called his favorite project. It even won Emmys. But the show lasted only a year, canceled after his 1985 memoir, I Never Played the Game, criticized his colleagues at ABC. His enemies inside the network had the excuse they needed to push him aside. For a man who had once been the face of primetime sports, the fall was swift, and it was devastating. Loss, illness, and the quiet decline. By the mid-1980s, Howard Cosell's television career was effectively over. Once the most visible sportscaster in America, he had become a polarizing figure the networks no longer wanted to showcase. Sports Beat had been canceled, his memoir had alienated colleagues, and Monday Night Football had moved on without him. Though he still had his radio segments, his voice no longer carried the weight it once did. For the first time in decades, Cosell was not at the center of the action, and he felt it deeply. For a man who thrived on being seen and heard, fading into the background was a slow torment. The personal blows soon followed. In 1990, his wife Mary Edith Emmy Abrams, whom he had married in 1944, passed away after 46 years by his side. Emmy had been his anchor, the only person who could calm him, and the one he depended on for stability. Cosell admitted he wouldn't even cross the Triborough Bridge without her. Her death shattered him. Friends and family noticed the change immediately. Without Emmy, he was diminished. The fire that had once driven him seemed to flicker out, leaving behind a man who looked older almost overnight. Then came the illnesses that slowly consumed him. In 1991, at the age of 73, Doctors discovered a malignant tumor in his chest. Surgery successfully removed it, but the procedure left him weakened. Recovery was painful and slow, and the ordeal seemed to strip away much of the bravado that had once defined him. Not long after, Cosell developed heart problems, adding a daily reminder of his vulnerability. As if that weren't enough, early signs of Parkinson's disease began to show. His hands sometimes trembled, his movements slowed, and his once rapid delivery grew unsteady. A series of minor strokes followed, further robbing him of energy and clarity. For a man whose power had always come from his booming voice and commanding presence, these changes were cruel. His voice grew quieter, his gait unsteady. Those who saw him in his final years often remarked on how frail he seemed, nothing like the fierce personality who had once dominated prime time. His grandchildren remembered a softer man, reading them poetry in hushed tones, but for the public, Cosell's absence was nearly total. By 1992, he retired completely, leaving both radio and television behind. For someone who had lived in front of the camera, the retreat into silence was agonizing. He spent much of his time at home, reflecting on his career. Interviews from those years show a man haunted by regret. He believed he had been pushed out of broadcasting too soon, denied the chance to end on his own terms. He often looked back on September 5, 1983, the remark that ended it all, and the bitterness never truly faded. On April 23, 1995, Howard Cosell died in New York at the age of 77. The official cause, a heart embolism. The reaction was divided, just as his career had been. Some remembered him as a pioneer who transformed sports broadcasting into something sharper and smarter. Others pointed only to the arrogance, the feuds, the drinking, and the controversies. In death, as in life, Howard Cosell remained polarizing. The man who once told America he would always tell it like it is had been silenced, not just by illness, but by the weight of his own legacy. Howard Cosell once stood at the very top of American sports, his voice shaping how millions experienced the biggest moments in history. But in the end, it wasn't the decades of loyalty to athletes, the groundbreaking interviews, or even the unforgettable calls that defined his career. It was one night, one comment, and 6 words that could never be taken back. For a man who believed he was destined for greatness, the silence that followed was perhaps the harshest punishment of all. Do you think Howard Cosell should be remembered as a pioneer who changed sports broadcasting, or as the man who destroyed himself with a single mistake? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of the legends who rose and tragically fell.